Population theories. Point 1. For the analysis of demographic variables and population pattern, demographic theories are taken into consideration. Same point. The principal theories includes ABC करके लिख लो, Malthusian concept, Marxian concept and demographic transition model. We want to deal up with each one of them in details one by one. So let us begin with A, Malthusian concept. Robert Thomas Malthus, an essay on principles of population, 1798. Quick bullet points. Point number 1, English demographer and sociologist. English demographer and sociologist. Attempted, next point, attempted demographic theory. Attempted demographic theory based on projection of population. He developed the concept involving basic animal instinct of humans, bracket, to minimize variations caused by socio-cultural or economic development. Next, concept is based on two universal laws, boldly underlined. Two universal laws. 1. Persisting passion between the sexes. Persisting passion between the sexes. Next, food required for survival. Food required for survival. Next point, regulated by first law, early marriages will take place. Same point, change over. Longer reproductive age in marital bondage will result into, underline it, larger number of births. Star mark point. These numbers can be controlled by preventive checks. Very important, boldly underline or put it in bubble. Preventive checks. Same point, continue. These are defined to be the control measures in human possession. In human possession, including 3 bullet points, including delaying the marriage, next applying moral restraint, finally abortions. This point is over. Next point, in the absence of applying preventive checks, uncontrolled population will grow at, boldly underline, geometric rate. Same point, in comparison, means of subsistence will grow at arithmetic rate, underline boldly. Next point, in due course of time, therefore, there will be increased gap between demand for food resource and its supplies. Next point, the evolved scarcity, key term, underline scarcity, will divide the society into haves rich and have nots. Next point. Increasing magnitude of deprivation. Increasing magnitude of deprivation in due course of time will create the effectivity of second universal law, food required for survival. Same point, change over. In the effect of this law, in bubble or boldly underline, positive check will come in effect. Same point, change over. These are nature induced checks that includes, we are writing 4 things, write them as 4 bullet point. That includes acute food shortage, next, outbreak of diseases, next, scarcity related, violent conflicts, and the most important, so with a star mark, natural calamity, write it in bracket, tends to affect the population, that are least resilient, close the bracket. Last point, it is positive check that ruthlessly balances population to means of subsistence. Drop your pens. In the last class, I gave you an outline of it. Now I have asked you to write it. As I promised, I'll dictate it. Simple concept, and I think it is done forever. The concept do not create trouble. Every aspirant will write Malthusian concept more or less in the same frame. But what will make and break my answer is now where we are landing onto. Appraisal of the concept. Because that makes examiner understand how much I have comprehended. With every passing step, will be more enriching our comprehension of Malthusian concept, but we certainly cannot wait. Let us take other concept and then we'll learn Malthus. These are stepping stone, and every topic will eventually get nurtured as I proceed further with the study. So what is Malthusian concept? Simple logic. As I said in the last class also, it is about 2 laws, and I don't discard it. कई स्कॉलर्स हैं जो रॉबर्ट थॉमस माल्थस को क्रिटिसाइज करते हैं. द 4th पॉइंट दैट इज अबाउट नेचुरल कैलामिटी. स्तुति, यू आर आस्किंग अबाउट नेचुरल कैलामिटी. I am repeating it. I think it will come up with the answer, and if it is specific any other question, do drop in the chat. Okay, so when I talk about criticism, like some scholar says, he is too generalized with his attempt. Why to consider humans with the animal instinct? We are not, of course we belong to animal kingdom, but we have got the cultural, technological, education, societal norms. We don't behave like animals. But in the beginning itself, I have asked you to write, considering animal instinct gives me what benefit? You are Christianity follower, you are Islamic follower, you are Oriental culture follower, developed country, developing country, all those variations are put to rest. Because at base, all of us are animals, yes or no? So it is something which is very rationally talked about and we cannot discard. Similarly, some scholars criticize, and even in Majid Hussain Human Geography, you are taking up important purview of criticism which reads, natural calamity is not correctly utilized as a positive check, because natural calamity will not stuck up selecting the dense populated area or deprived area. Natural calamity to kahin bhi aa sakti hai. But natural calamity or natural hazard is defined how? How do I define natural calamity or natural hazard? It's the extreme natural event that have detrimental effect on humans. Detrimental effect on humans is function of human resilience. And resilience is function of economic capacity. More I am deprived, less resilience I'll be having, more affected I'll be by the natural calamity. I find a rationale there. While writing critically, examine, analyze, I should not pick up the gun and start shooting the scholar. Wrong here, wrong here, wrong here, wrong here. Galat approach hai. They are ultimately the very prominent contributors to different approaches. They have got some pros and cons. And why are we learning 1798 concept now? There is validity, that is the reason. How do I judge the validity? By default is dependent on my knowledge about demography, which I am the beginning step of. So I might not be taking a 100% understanding, but I don't find treating animal instinct to be point of criticism. And I am much convinced natural calamity is not area selective, agreed. But natural calamity will have its higher detrimental effect if the population is less resilient. And what determines the resilience of the population? Economic capacity. If you have got cushion called economic capacity, you can bounce back. If you don't have, then you die out, perish. You don't have the capacity to revert back. So I think it is comfortable there. So this is the concept, and the concept can easily be retained as 2 laws, 2 rates, 2 checks and 2 divides. I think we have understood. What are the pros and what are the cons of the concept? We are quickly attempting it one by one. So appraisal of the concept you are taking as heading, and I am quickly adding on pros and cons to it. Write it down. Appraisal. I am writing it, copy it down. First is pros. First attempt of theory building, of course in social sciences, asked for urgent need to control population growth. Yes, you have to write social sciences. And very important, number 3, so I am putting on a star mark to it. You can also use such tricks in your answer writing. Every point that you write is important, but some of them have got higher degrees of importance. That is where we underline them, we put on a star mark, we put them in the oval or bubble, whatsoever is convenient, to give examiner the requirement ki you see this, these are the important things that we have written. So it's a good thing that you can develop. Very important. Every anti-natalist country, even today, have common practice of delaying legal age of marriage. Yes, all of us. Delaying legal age of marriage. Is it not justifying validity of dash check of Robert Thomas Malthus? Quick. P will not do, positive, preventive, दोनों ही P होते हैं. Come on. Virtual class students. Good Muskan. Come on all of you. Good Stuti. चलो सब लोग लाइन में आ गए. Very good. Yes, it is preventive checks. Preventive checks includes delaying the marriage. So this is precisely the most valid thing that we can justify with Robert Thomas Malthus. Pros. What are the things that are valid, absolutely valid, as proposed by Robert Thomas Malthus? Number 1, the concept building. Why it is important? We have to learn models, theories building in human geography. Generalization. Second thing that we have written is urgency to control population. What you need to understand is that 1798 was the time when global population was not growing. Global population growth actually began since 1950s. So it was based on projection that there is an urgent need for us to plan population, otherwise it will be creating problem later. And yes, we can definitely say if the global community would have somewhere taken a responsive attempt to what he talked about, possibility is that the global population problem would not be of the magnitude which it is today. That of course we can speculate. And the most important valid point of course is delay the legal age of marriage. After year 2000, it is still in the official paper called New Population Policy. Of course, it doesn't sound good for us to call new because good 22 years have passed by. Our last population policy was in year 2000 and it is NDA 2 which is taking efforts to mold the population policy, and there is very strong attempt to formally push the legal age of marriage. 18-21 is our case, females male, and in China it is 24-27. Which countries best represent anti-natalist? India, China. And both are the examples where we have pushed the legal age of marriage is excellent validity point for Malthusian concept. I think we have learned it. Now, we have to talk about cons, and basically cons gives you the reference of balanced purview. Criticism. How do I criticize? I think all of you will agree to it easily. When I talk about cons or the negative things or the criticism that we correlate with the scholar, I'm developing key points, I'm advising you to copy it down, then I explain, you will easily understand. The first thing is, we do agree to geometric rate of population growth. And as we agree to it, so we give examiner the proof. Why are we agreeing to it? So we can easily give examiner this. We agree to, इसका formal version और detailed version हम बाद में बनाएंगे, अभी सिर्फ जो हमारे लिए requirement है. So we quickly give examiner this, and this is the better way of drawing it. So here I have plotted time, and here I have plotted total population. Global population since 10,000 years before present till 1950s. So I mark 1950s at a very end level. This is called J curve. You can quickly draw it to justify. What is J curve of the population showing? Geometric rate of growth. Yes or no? Exponential growth. Agreed? Agreed? अब copy down करो, फिर हमें go ahead दो. We are talking about cons, but till now it looks like we are talking about pros. So we'll make it cons just in the content. ठीक है? Okay. Criticism, limitation of Malthusian concept. So point one, बड़ा important point. तीनों ही point बहुत important है. That we believe in geometric rate. Why we believe in geometric rate? Demographic trends of world shows that population of world have registered exponential growth after 1950s. J curve proves that there has been population boom, and that is what is geometric rate. So we agree to it. अब थोड़ी देर ध्यान से सोचेंगे, पेन ड्रॉप कर दो. All of you right here. Imagine, I don't believe in arithmetic rate. सोच कर देखो, अर्थमेटिक रेट क्यों गलत है? United Nations Fund for Population Activity. We are going to the study of all demographic variables one by one. Attempting it here. I'm just changing the color. Carefully try and understand what I'm saying. United Nations Fund for Population Activity. We are taking the data table of 2010-11 without saying. जहां पर भी डेटा चेंज करेंगे आपको बता देंगे that we are taking the population projection of 2019. Otherwise our maximum study will be based here because we take decadal updation of demographic data table. 2021 data table got delayed because of the pandemic. So some of the incidences 2010-11 proves to be too outdated. It doesn't give me the real picture. So that is where we rope in the population projection of 2019. So wherever I'll be using, I'll be specifying. UNFPA 2010-11 says global population will grow, is to grow till 2100 AD. बाकी सब कुछ छोड़ दो. Global population will continue to grow. Global population will continue to grow till 2100 AD. Now think about this J curve. Namiksha, it is looking that shape because we have developed a crude one. We'll be developing defined one. Once will come to the growth of global population. Please concentrate. Now, when I talk about geometric rate is correct, and I believe for few seconds, arithmetic rate is also correct. So growth of global population should not continue to be the case. population should have started declining? Yes, no, means J curve by this time should have become inverted U curve. Yes, no, and UNFPA says global population is not going to stabilize before 2100. What does that mean? Population growth is here to stay. तो क्या आपने surface area of earth बढ़ा दिया? आपने cultivable land बढ़ा दिया? नहीं. Rather we are running the campaign, save the soil. Because we are having more than 40% of our cultivated area degraded one way or the other. It is nowhere that we have increased the surface area of the earth. We have actually increased means of subsistence at par with growth of population. So I am believer of geometric rate, but I discard arithmetic rate. बात समझ में आ गई? बहुत ही पेसिमिस्टिक सा व्यू पॉइंट है. अगर हम अर्थमेटिक रेट पर बिलीव करें तो अभी तक जे कर्व यू बन जाना चाहिए. आई एम रिपीटिंग, I take the reference of, I make up a cruder version and it will be easier for all of us to understand. So ध्यान से देखो, अगर हम population के growth को ऐसे believe कर रहे हैं, shortest time booming growth and saying this is perfect geometric, तो means of subsistence, removing it here, means of subsistence if is growing at arithmetic rate, what will happen? Growth of population will convert itself to decline. How population will continue to grow if there is scarcity of food? So taking support of J curve, we are saying geometric rate is correct. So taking support of inverted U, we are trying to prove arithmetic rate is incorrect. समझ में आ गया? लिखो अब. Point 1, cause agrees to geometric rate of population growth. Agrees to geometric rate of population growth, but not to the arithmetic rate of means of subsistence as population growth projections. Population growth projections are justified till year 2100. That proves matching increase in means of subsistence with the growth of population. With the growth of population. Star mark करके इसी point पे लिखिए. The J curve would have converted to inverted U. Underline कर लो इसको. Inverted U. Arithmetic rate would have been real. I think it is done. Are we comfortable with this point of criticism? We are not criticizing. General reading में हमें क्या मिलता है? He has over generalized rates. We have very clearly justified geometric rate is not wrong because the growth of population have been exponential. So it matches with geometric rate, exponential rate. Why arithmetic rate is unreal? Because arithmetic rate से तो क्या होगा? Population will surpass means of subsistence. I'll be talking about it. It's called Malthusian catastrophe, which we have to learn with the neo-Malthusian. So I'm purposefully avoiding it. Population, if will continue to grow and food required for survival is failing to keep pace with, तो hunger से तो population का decline शुरू हो जाना चाहिए ना. तो decline का मतलब क्या है? We are taking it in relativity to the curves. So J curve will get converted to inverted U. That is how you take it up. And that is not happening. 2100 तक global population बढ़ेगा. इसका मतलब arithmetic rate is not correct. ठीक है? Second point of criticism is again very important. So हम उसको B करके label कर देते हैं. And that is largely credited to sociologist. वो क्या कह रहे हैं? दो चीजें समझ लो फिर हम लिखवा देते हैं. एक तो बायोलॉजिकल लिमिट ऑफ फर्टिलिटी को कंसिडर नहीं करा. बायोलॉजिकल लिमिट टू फर्टिलिटी इज नॉट कंसिडर्ड. दीज आर द की पॉइंट्स. आप इसको किसी भी तरह से एनरिच और एनलार्ज कर सकते हैं. And second, it is faulty treatment of considering. Important it is, so I want to write it changing the color. Considering biological need and sociological need to be synonymous. They are not. Biological need and sociological need to be synonymous. What is biological need? Desire to have sex. What is sociological need? Decision to give birth to a child. I hope you are understanding. How are you treating both to be synonymous? It's illogical. मतलब सिर्फ क्योंकि आपको अपना point prove करना है, animal instinct है, so you are such generalizing that longer the marital bondage in reproductive age, larger will be the number of birth. But is there the biological limit to fertility? He is not talking about it. But more important point of criticism within this, largely credited to sociologists, is that it is wrong. It is wrong. It's faulty. Biological desire and sociological decision cannot be the same. So you have to understand that when we talk about passion between the sexes, because we are treating humans as absolute animal, is okay. But that doesn't go synonymous to decision to give birth to child. I think you have understood. So very clearly, this is extremely generalized and do not come up with the practicality. I hope it is comfortable. फटाफट से point लिखना चाहो तो लिख लो. Second point of criticism, overgeneralizations. Overgeneralizations. Underline कर लीजिए term को. With ignoring biological limit to fertility and faulty treatment of considering biological need. Underline करें इसको. Biological need in bracket, desire to have sex, close the bracket, and sociological need, underline again, in bracket, decision to give birth to child, to be synonymous. I think this point is very comfortable. And third point ropes in Karl Marx. Can you quickly remind me what it was? We are purposefully writing it as third because it takes me to the Marxian concept. Come on. No, what is the point of criticism first? What is the point of criticism? Koshish. Population growth do not divide society. Divided society leads to growth of population. Yes or no? Karl Marx was not a demographer, and Karl Marx was a very strong critic to Malthusian conclusion that uncontrolled population growth will result into division of society. Totally discarded. Population growth do not lead to division of society. Divided society leads to growth of population. I think it is comfortable. Fatapat third point we likh lo. Credited to Karl Marx, the concept is criticized as it concluded population growth to be the reason for division of the society. Same point change over. In practicality, it is divided society that leads to growth of population. Because we have to talk about Marxian concept in details, we just want to keep it this brief. We are done with understanding, writing, precisely given more time than desired for Malthusian concept. We have learned what is the concept, what are the pros and what are the cons for the concept. Are you giving me go ahead? Done all of us? I think we are done, very safely done. All of you here giving me go ahead. चलो अब फटाफट से मार्क्सियन कंसेप्ट को रोप इन करते हैं. I talked about Marxian concept also in last class. The only advice to be repeated before I quickly ask you to write down Marxian concept. Marx propounded theory on population. So we all are aware of the fact that Karl Marx was not a demographer. तो एक बस सिंपल सा पॉइंट अपने दिमाग में क्या रखना है, that Karl Marx का कोई भी demographic concept, any write up about Karl Marx is not making sense if you are not introducing the answer with Malthusian work, because Karl Marx was simply retaliating to Malthusian conclusion that population growth will divide the society. So that is our last point of criticism. We are just building over it. So Marx concept, what is Marxian demographic idea? In UPSC examination, the question that has been asked from this particular topic is, quotes unquotes, Marxian demographic ideas are more humanitarian comment. If I change exploitive, capitalist like politico-economic setup to more parity supporting socialist like politico-economic setup, automatically population growth will be contained. आ गया humanitarian, parity, justice, equity, yes or no, inclusion. So such type of question you have to build up with many other concepts of your syllabus like population, well-being, social well-being, quality of life, because once you are providing individuals with that, automatically there will be the control of the population. So we are aware of the concept, we are quickly building up the concept. Marxian concept, quick bullet points. Quick bullet points. Point number 1. Karl Marx, in his attempts to justify socialist setup to be more favorable for humans than exploitive capitalist setup, projected some ideas on population growth. He was strongly retaliating Malthusian observation. Growth of population leads to division of society. Same point. He argued that divided society, underline karo, results in population growth. Next point. Marxian theory on population thus identifies presence of the rich, underline, and the poor, underline, in capitalist economic setup. Next point. The rich, bubble में डालो और separate sub bullet points बनाओ. The rich, underline it boldly or put it in bubble. And now their characteristics in bullet points, separate bullet points, are minor share of total population, are owners of means of production, are the controllers of all the profit from the production process, are capable of increasing their income by cutting down on labor wages. By cutting down on labor wages, they thus keep on multiplying their affluences, riches. They are rich people, they keep on multiplying their affluences. Okay? Change over, next point. The poor, again boldly underline or put it in bubble. In comparison, point number 1, our majority share of population, next, have no rights on means of production, have no rights on profit, next two are very important, are not entitled to legitimate wages. They continue to multiply their deprivation. I think all the points are very clearly done. Yes? I have given you 5 points versus this is something that creates out the logical, supposedly a 20 marker question you are writing. where you have to talk about critically examine, judge the validity of Malthusian concept. So the last point of criticism that you are writing, you can certainly enrich it with this. We have just left it as Malthus was of the belief that population growth leads to the division of the society, and Karl Marx is saying no, society gets divided, thus population increases. So I have understood that capitalism has created division of the society. But where is growth of population? We are now adding that. Are we comfortable till here? Now, because it is evils of capitalism that not just that majority of the population is made deprived living. They are made to lead a deprived living. They are not even entitled to the legitimate wage. I am working for 16-18 hours and I am not even getting the legitimate wage. And the rich have got the legitimate right to save on my wages. That you are not giving me my required wage, no labor right, nothing. This is evils of capitalism. Now, because I am multiplying my deprivation, what exactly is the decision I will take? Rich is multiplying what they possess, asset. And poor multiplies the only asset that they possess, population. What is the myth? What is the assumption? It is called perception. I will write perception. What is the perception based on which poor, the majority of the population, decides to increase the number of birth per family? Based on the perception that larger children, more hands to work. More hands to work will increase the family income. Number one, it will increase population, and number two, it will further increase deprivation. And the gap between rich and poor will go on increasing. So if the cause of growth of population is unjust, politico-economic setup called capitalism, so the reason to or the method to control population growth will be substituting this unjust politico-economic setup to more just politico-economic setup like socialism. Once you start generating parity, population growth will automatically be contained. I hope you are understanding. And this is very well proved by United Nations Fund for Population Activity. It very clearly says economic development is best contraception. फटाफट से point भी लिखो. Next point लिखेंगे rich versus poor. We are done with it. Next point. Population starts growing. Population starts growing as the poor decides to multiply the only asset that they possess. Underline it. Population. Same point. It is based on the perception that increased number of workforce will increase income of family, controlling their deprivation. Same point, change over. But in reality, this perception, apart from increasing population, multiplies poverty. Star mark. Marx thus argued that substituting exploitive, unjust, politico-economic setup as capitalism, more just and parity-inducing politico-economic setup, bracket socialism, is the only way to control population growth. स्टार मार्क करके लिखेंगे UNFPA, United Nations Fund for Population Activities. UNFPA also identifies economic development to be best contraception. So complete theory of Karl Marx was basically dependent on, criticizing, simple point of Robert Thomas Malthus. Population growth don't divide society. Simple logic. Division of the society leads to population growth. Now if I have to build up the concept, what will I do? Why the society got divided in capitalist setup? Capitalist setup divides society as rich and poor. Rich are very small share of total population. They are the owners of means of production. They are the owners of the profit. In the evils of capitalism, they also have got the right to cut down on wages and add to their monetary asset. So ultimately, they are multiplying what they possess. And when I talk about poor, they are majority of the population. They are subjected to deprived living because they don't have any right on means of production. They don't have any right on profit. And the evils of capitalism, they are not even entitled to the legitimate wage. So due course of time, they will multiply their deprivation. How population starts growing? Population starts growing when the deprivation multiplies to that level that a perception evolves. If I increase the workforce of my family, I'll be increasing the family income, and it has been proven time and again. I mentioned in the last class Maoist population policy. This was what was followed in China also. Because more children is given birth to, you will be having more hands to work. But is it actually working that way? Because more children is actually more liability. So you will further be increasing demand per family rather than income for family. Children are required to be nurtured, to be grown up as an adult, then only they can be workforce. Infant is not a workforce. I hope you are understanding. So they multiply not just population but their deprivation also. So cause of growth of population is unjust politico-economic setup. So control of population will be done by what? Just politico-economic setup, simple logic. This is what is Marxian viewpoint. Are we comfortable? बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट कंसेप्ट्स हैं, इतने आसान कंसेप्ट्स हैं कि इसको वन टाइम आप स्टडी कर ले विद अ कंप्लीट कॉम्प्रिहेंशन, इट प्रिसाइजली इज डन फॉर एवर. हाउ यू विल राइट द आंसर विल ऑफ कोर्स डिपेंड ऑन व्हाट इज द डिमांड ऑफ द क्वेश्चन, बट वी हैव ट्राइड टू टेक द कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव परव्यू ऑफ बोथ द कंसेप्ट. So these two concepts have given us understanding that yes, there is the requirement of talking about growth causes of population, requirement of controlling of the population. Control of population can be positive preventive check by Robert Thomas Malthus. Control of population by Karl Marx is let there be economic development, population will automatically get controlled. And UNFPA also advocates that. So we find it to be all inclusive kind of a thing altogether. Now we want to take the third model, and this third model will be slightly more brain grilling, because to judge, when I talk about development namiksha, it includes all. Development is societal, education, awareness, cultural, economic, everything. Without education, economic development cannot be attained, we all can understand. And the definition of education by default is related to awareness. It might not be always with a formal education. So yes, you can add that, there is no problem there. अब जरा ध्यान से समझेंगे, यहां तक हमने पिछले क्लास में भी समझा था, and now we have written it down. Now which is the next concept that we have to take into account? It is called demographic transition model. There are some warming up effect required. ध्यान से समझते जाते हैं. One is crude birth rate. Let me write it completely. Crude birth rate. After understanding, if you think you require it, you can copy down. पहले समझ लो. What is crude birth rate? Number of live births per 1,000 population per year. What is crude birth rate? Number of live births per 1,000 population per year. I want to make it in more cruder terms. Can I say crude birth rate is number of addition in per 1,000 population per year? How many are getting added per 1,000 per year? Yes or no? In the continuity, if I ask you to take crude death rate, I think now CDR will do. Crude death rate, what it should be? Number of deaths per 1,000 population per year. So if crude birth rate is addition per 1,000 population, crude death rate is subtraction. Sounds very inhuman, but it is reality. 2010-11 UN population table we are taking into consideration. So 2010-11 UN population gives me justification. What is the global crude birth rate? It is 21 live births per 1,000 per year. You will not write value only as 21 this way I have safely written it. You have to always write 21 live births per thousand per year. 21 means nothing. And what is the crude death rate? It is 9. What I want to prove, थोड़ा सा समझ कर देखते हैं. If in the global population 21 is added per thousand per year and 9 is subtracted per thousand per year, are you not growing total population? Logical. Demographic transition, demographic population transition, change over in due course of time, talks about changing trend of fertility, crude birth rate, mortality, crude death rate to judge population change. Are you understanding? Which are the two demographic variables, which are the two demographic attributes that demographic transition model takes into consideration? Crude birth rate and crude death rate. ये टर्म भी सप्लीमेंट कर देते हैं, लिखना चाहते हैं तो उसके बाद लिख लीजिए. I'll be adding many such box item within. At the appropriate place we try to learn what is total fertility rate, what is infant mortality rate, so it becomes easier that way. Introduction के लिए जरूरी था इसलिए बता दिया. Crude birth rate is also called fertility and crude death rate is also called mortality. पहले यहां तक गो अहेड दो, ये क्लियर हो गया. टू रेट्स, फर्टिलिटी, मोर्टालिटी, क्रूड बर्थ रेट, क्रूड डेथ रेट. क्लियर हुआ ऑल ऑफ अस? हैंड रेस करके बता दीजिए क्लास. थम्स अप, हैंड रेस, कुछ भी. चलो ग्रेट. अच्छा, I have understood the two demographic variables that we take commonly. आप इसको कॉपी डाउन कर रहे हो, फटाफट करो, हमें गो अहेड दो. हम आपको डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन मॉडल का बिगनिंग बताते हैं, धीरे धीरे उसको समझेंगे. लिखने में ज्यादा ज्यादा आधा घंटे का समय लगेगा, समझना पहले. गुड टू सी यू मानव. हमेशा कैमरा बंद करके क्यों बैठते हो? ताकि आराम से सो सके, है ना? Are we done? Taken? I have got image of demographic transition model, but I want to construct it so that we understand it well. लिख लो, फटाफट लिखो, बता दो लिखने के बाद. United Nations Fund for Population Activity, UNFPA. We call it population tables. Can I proceed? Scholars who propounded how it goes, we will just talk about each one of them. Base create करें, ध्यान से समझेंगे. Time is plotted on horizontal axis and fertility, mortality is plotted on vertical axis. That is the reason I introduced you to fertility, mortality in the beginning. बहुत ध्यान से समझते जाओ हम क्या कर रहे हैं. I am using black color to denote mortality rate. I'll be labeling it. अभी हम पहले बना ले. This is my mortality or death rate. You know that you can supplement these two terms. So with black marker I have used mortality. I want to change the color so that comparison becomes much easier. Now I am plotting fertility. This is the crux of demographic transition model. थोड़ा सा ध्यान से देखेंगे. I can see from, this is not complete diagram as yet, I can see from this line diagram so far that in due course of time, fertility, mortality both registers their transition from very high level to very low level. Yes, no, yes. And why the fertility, mortality in the beginning have been at very high level and then it starts dipping? Because in due course of time you will have medical advancement, health services. In the beginning what will happen? High fertility because I don't know how to control fertility. High mortality because life expectancy is low. Infant mortality rate is high. You are hardly living more than 25-30 years. Life expectancy is average number of years that we can live at the, taken from the birth. So from birth, if I say that India has a life expectancy of 72 years, what does that mean? On an average, an individual in India will live up to 72 years. This is called life expectancy. So why fertility, mortality is high in beginning? Because we don't know, we are not that equipped with the medicine support. A question arises, is it so that with time, the medicine science or the health amenities develop such that we first try to influence mortality and then we influence fertility? Do we have development of medicine? Do we have development of health services, which this kind of selection, that let us first develop the ways by which we can control mortality and then we'll work to control fertility? Do you agree to this? कि पहले मेडिकल साइंस उस पर काम करेगी जिससे मोर्टालिटी कम हो, फिर काम करेगी जिससे फर्टिलिटी कम हो? नो, मेडिकल साइंस डेवलपमेंट इज नॉट लाइक दिस. देन व्हाई डू यू थिंक? अब ध्यान से देखो, एक चीज तो समझ में आ गया कि डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन इज अबाउट ट्रांजिशन इन टाइम फ्रॉम हाई लेवल ऑफ फर्टिलिटी मोर्टालिटी टू लो लेवल ऑफ फर्टिलिटी मोर्टालिटी. Second thing which is also evident here is mortality starts dipping first. Fertility takes longer time to dip. Why that will take place? I think all of you will agree that fertility requires societal mindset, perception change. I use very crude expression. Take this medicine, take this medical support, and it is going to increase your life expectancy. Will agree? Take this medicine, take this medical support, it is going to regulate your fertility. Your family, your caste, your creed, your religion, everything will come up in your forefront. You will say, I'll think and decide. To influence fertility, you have to influence mindset. To influence mortality, you just require medical support. I hope you are understanding this. That is the reason fertility takes time to dip. अब बहुत ध्यान से देखते जाओ. I am using another color because I want to rope in total population also. चलो ध्यान से देखेंगे. Total population to begin with will be very stable and then will start growing. And after certain level of growth will become stagnant to decline. I have created the very crude but defined version of demographic transition model. मेरे ख्याल से आप लोगों को समझ में आ रहा है. 3 and here we have one more stage. So I have labeled it as 4 and 5. समझ में आया इसमें? क्या? This is demographic transition model. What are the demographic variables that are considered here? Fertility, mortality, total population. What is the interplay that we are trying to learn? When high fertility is counterbalanced by high mortality, total population remains stationary. When fertility remains static high and mortality starts dipping, come on, addition to the population remains high, subtraction from the population is on continuous decline. Will population not grow? Population will grow in stage 2 as well as stage 3. Come on here class. Stage 3 will mark up the growth. थोड़ा सा इसको amend कर देते हैं. Stage 3 will mark up the growth. But this growth will not be that exponential, इसलिए थोड़ा सा उसको मैनिपुलेट करना है, ये स्टेबल होकर डिक्लाइन हो जाए. चलो अब सही हो गया. I think now it is much done. ठीक है, चलो stage 2 and stage 3. Rahul, I am repeating everything. Just concentrate on the diagram, all of you, and please try to make sense, because this figure is not difficult. Applying it to map of world is difficult. So you are comfortable with this figure, this concept, then applying it to map becomes very easy. ठीक? So I'll give you time to copy it down. अभी थोड़ा सा ध्यान से समझते हैं, all of us. And Rahul, I think all your questions will get answered. If not, you can ask me again. I am repeating, please concentrate. What is demographic transition model? Demographic transition model is a transition of fertility and mortality in course of time, leading to change in total population. What is the general transition that I see of fertility and mortality? Fertility, mortality changes from very high level to low level. Second, mortality starts dipping first. Fertility follows. Time taken by fertility to follow can vary, but it takes time. And I am convinced why fertility will take time. Fertility takes time because fertility cannot be influenced just by availability of medical support. Mortality gets influenced as soon as you are providing medical assistance. Fertility will be influenced when you are modifying human perception. So as mortality starts dipping and fertility remains high, so I can notice that in stage 2 and stage 3, fertility is more than mortality. What is the difference between stage 2 and stage 3? What is the difference between stage 2 and stage 3? Stage 2, fertility is static high. Stage 3 begins when fertility have started dipping. Yes, no? So do I sound convincing to all of our students in the virtual class? I want you also to respond. This will be the point. I have put on green dots. This will be the point where you will experience population boom, explosion, maximum gap between fertility and mortality. Yes, no? Yes. Second thing, am I correct in saying population will grow? Population will grow in stage 2, stage 3 and even stage 4. Yes? But principal growth will be in stage 2 and 3. Yes, no? Principal growth of population will be in stage 2 and 3. You have to give me go ahead, hand raise is required, Y is required. If you have not understood, type N, I understand, I repeat. Great. Population will grow in stage 2. Because what is growth of population? Addition is more than subtraction. So addition remains static high, subtraction is on decline. So gap between dipping mortality and static high fertility will lead to increase in population. So I do see some increase in population in stage 4 also, but stage 4 is nowhere comparable to the population growth in 3 and 2. अब 3, 2 को कंपेयर करो, बहुत ध्यान से कंपेयर करो. What is the difference between stage 2 and stage 3? Stage 3, fertility have started declining. तो क्या मतलब होगा इसका? Gap between fertility and mortality in 3 is also big. So population will grow, but growth rate of population will decline. और स्टेज 2 में क्या होगा? Population will grow and growth rate of population will also grow. Agreed all of us? Here, virtual class students, पूछना पड़ेगा तब बताओगे. बताओ.
India is in stage
3. 1981 census, मतलब 70s का decade. We are the children of 70s decade. 70s का decade, India was population boom, explosion, highest decadal growth rate 24% since 19. तो 70s का जो डेटा होगा कौन से सेंसस में आएगा? 81. कम ऑन, 70s का जो डेमोग्राफिक डेटा होगा वो 81 में आएगा ना. तो 1971 to 81 census, 1971 to 81 census means I am talking about 81 census data. 81 census data recorded 24% of decadal growth rate of Indian population, highest. Since then, Indian population is growing. By 2027, India will surpass to become the most populous country of the world, surpassing China, of course. Our population growth is here to stay, but mind it, since 1981 we have entered stage 3. Population is growing, but decadal growth rate of population is on decline. 81 में 24% था, 2011 में 17% है. तो 24% से आप 17% पे आ गए और decadal growth rate, but population is growing. बताइए पहले stage 2, 3 का difference clear हुआ all of you here? Good, I am still repeating. ये concept समझना मुश्किल नहीं है, पर इस कंसेप्ट का आंसर लिखना बहुत ट्रिकी है. ट्रिकी क्यों है? हमें मैप ऑफ वर्ल्ड को पिकअप करना है. हम डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन मॉडल को टेक्स्ट बुक ओरिएंटेड परव्यू में नहीं पढ़ते. I'll make myself aware of who has propounded this. I'll make myself aware of who has amended it, definitely. But I'll hand in hand prove validity of this model by making myself comfortable with the map of world. ये value है इस model की. If I say that UN population table projects, today we are slightly more than 7 billion global population. UNFPA projects that global population will stabilize by 2100. कई बार repeat कर लिया. By 2100, global population will touch 11 billion mark. दोबारा repeat कर रहे हैं, सारे values लिखेंगे, don't worry, अभी समझो. 7 billion plus हैं हम, and we will touch 11 billion mark by 2100 AD. That will be the time will stabilize our population. So from the present 7 billion plus to that projected 11 billion, 90% increase is projected in Africa. If you don't go by any rationality, you have to mug it up. And when you are mugging anything blindly, it doesn't come up as a quality write up in the answer, है ना? अब हम demographic transition model की value समझते हैं. Most of the African countries, and you will understand the value how we have learned political map of world. Most of the African countries are in stage 2 of demographic transition. That means they are experiencing here, or they are at the verge of experiencing, anywhere here, population explosion. Whereas most of the Asian countries, most of the Asian countries are here. So they have experienced population explosion. So if I repeat my example, India experienced population explosion in 70s. Kenya, हमारा example Kenya नहीं था, Tanzania. Tanzania is experiencing population explosion now. तो Tanzania India से 50 years younger हो गया ना demographic cycle में. Come on class. Here, Tanzania comes out to be 50 years younger than India. Means what was India in 1970s, Tanzania is now. So automatically, if I now repeat UNFPA projection and say 90% of growth of global population from 7 billion mark to 11 billion mark will be confined in Africa, I don't have any problem. I don't need to remember it. It comes spontaneous. Because Africa is majorly where? And Asia is majorly here. I hope all of us are understanding. So this gives me, this demographic transition model gives me excellent support to make sense with the map of world. Fertility, mortality tends to regulate total population. I hope you have understood the gist of it. आप formally built up करें demographic transition model. Yes, all of us. आप लोग भी स्पॉन्टेनियसली यस बोल दिया करो, क्योंकि यहाँ हमें कुछ पढ़ना पड़ता है, इसलिए थोड़ा दिमाग उधर चला जाता है. ठीक है, बढ़ जाए आगे. समझ में आ गया? अभी कंसेप्ट और क्लियर होगा. अभी आपको सिर्फ एक बेस दिया है. चलिए, वी आर फॉर्मली बिगिनिंग विद डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन मॉडल. इंपॉर्टेंट नेम्स एंड टर्म्स आई एम राइटिंग इट एंड देन आई विल कम बैक टू दिस डायग्राम वाला पेज. ओके, डेमोग्राफिc transition model. It's also called vital revolution and is also called demographic cycle, though the popular expression is demographic transition model, proposed by and noticed based on, keep on copying it down with me, empirical studies of European countries, fertility and mortality changes from high to low levels in due course of time. Fertility and mortality decreases from changes from high level to low level in due course of time. B, mortality dips first and fertility follows, taking variable time to dip. Taking variable time to dip. C and final. Change from high levels to low levels is synonymous to cultural, इकोनॉमिक एंड टेक्नोलॉजिकल ग्रोथ। तीनों पॉइंट लिखकर हमें गो अहेड दीजिए, हम समझा रहे हैं, फिर हम नेक्स्ट पेज ऐड करेंगे। वी आर लर्निंग डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन मॉडल। वी हैव अंडरस्टूड दैट डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन मॉडल was proposed by थॉमसन एंड नोटिस्टीन। बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग सा पॉइंट है, दो स्कॉलर्स का नाम साथ ले रहे हैं और इनके बीच में इतना मेजर टाइम गैप है। Whenever you read about demographic transition model, थॉमसन नोटिस्टीन का नाम हमेशा साथ में आएगा, हमने भी साथ में ही लिखवाया। बट आई वॉन्ट टू मेक अ पॉइंट क्लियर, इसलिए हमने ब्रैकेट में उनके ईयर्स लिख दिए। 1929 and 1945 is big time gap. Why do we consider them to be the twins propounded together? We could write Thomson proposed it first and Notice-Steen added it later. Basically, 29 Thomson and 45 Notice-Steen do not give us much difference in the approach. It's more or less the same. Only that in 29 the observed number of European countries were less. 45 में उसमें थोड़ा सा और addition है. So more or less we are having the same work, and that is the reason it is believed, it is considered that Thomson and Notice-Steen are the propounders of demographic transition model. We don't give much recognition to the time gap between them. Common thing.
इसमें वर्ल्ड वॉर II का कोई इफेक्ट नहीं पड़ा मॉडल पे?
मॉडल propound करने में ओरिएंटेशन एज इम्पैक्ट एज अ टाइम स्पेसिफिक फैक्टर जरूर पड़ेगा, पर क्या ये मॉडल किसी एक टाइम स्पेसिफिक परव्यू की बात कर रहा है? नहीं. It is not talking about world war or epidemic. It is not talking about. It's simply talking about what? कि होगा कैसे? What will be the nature of transition? So it is talking about that nature of transition. Yes, all of us. It is not talking about something that is time specific. चाहे it is in regards to World War 39 से 45 के बीच में, or it is about any sort of scarcity or natural calamity or violent conflict as a region specific purview. It's not considering that. जो चीजें आपके सामने लिखी हुई हैं और आपने लिख लिया, उसको ध्यान से समझो, फिर आगे बढ़ते हैं. Original propounders of demographic transition model are Thomson and Notice-Steen. Point 1. There is a time gap that is involved in their contribution. That is the reason we have written that in bracket. They proposed demographic transition model based on the demographic characteristics of European countries. So their base of empirical observation was European countries. Third very important thing we have written is that this model is based on certain defined observation. तो अब ये ऑब्जर्वेशन आपने लिख लिया, तो हम प्रीवियस पेज पर चले जाते हैं. दो चीजें तो ऑब्जर्वेशन के डायग्राम में दिखाई दे ही रही हैं. Which are the observations based on which this transition model is developed? A. Fertility, mortality changes from high level to low level. Go ahead, दे दो फटाफट से. A तो बिल्कुल क्लियर हो गया. सेकेंड, बी भी बिल्कुल आराम से क्लियर हो रहा है. फर्टिलिटी विल टेक टाइम टू डिप, मोर्टालिटी विल डिप फर्स्ट. ये भी मुझे इस ग्राफिकल रिप्रेजेंटेशन में दिखाई दे रहा है. मोर्टालिटी विल डिप फर्स्ट, फर्टिलिटी विल टेक टाइम टू डिप, but both of them will dip. So these two things are evident in this graphical representation. Third is not evident. What is part C you have written? If I am in transition stage 1 versus I am in transition stage 4-5. If I am in earlier stages of transition, I am culturally, demographically, economically backward. More I come to 4 and 5 stage, I am culturally, demographically, economically more developed. Is that comfortable? Not evident in the figure, but we have to take that into account. Come on, give me, go ahead. A, B, C. Comfortable all of us? यहाँ पर शाबाश। अच्छा, जब डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन मॉडल में एम्पेरिकल स्टडी बेस क्या है? यूरोप। वन थिंग, व्हाट आर द 3 ऑब्जर्वेशन मेड? 2 आर वेरी विजिबल है, थर्ड वन लॉजिकल है। फर्टिलिटी मोर्टालिटी हाई कब होती है? जब मेरे पास मेडिकल सपोर्ट नहीं है ना। फर्टिलिटी मोर्टालिटी आप कब कंट्रोल करना शुरू करते हो? जब मेडिकल एडवांसमेंट है। तो भाई हायर फर्टिलिटी मोर्टालिटी विल बी इन द कल्चरल पास्ट और व्हेन यू आर मोर प्रिमिटिव। फोर्थ वर्ल्ड कम्युनिटी, कल्चर का नाम बता दो। फोर्थ वर्ल्ड कम्युनिटी, गिव मी द नेम ऑफ द कल्चर। शाबाश, मेसो अफ्रीकन कल्चर। Very good. Even today, 2022 July, fourth world community are in which stage of demographic transition model? Fatabat. Fourth world communities. Fourth world communities, first. तभी तो fragile हैं. Particularly vulnerable tribal groups of India. Why they are fragile? High fertility, high mortality. Lesser life expectancy, place of birth, place of death is same. Life expectancy is not more than 25-30 years for them. So point is, when I take reference of transition, it is from high to low, done forever. High to low will be applied both for mortality, fertility, but mortality will be faster, fertility will follow. And if I have got high rates, I am culturally, economically backward. If I come to lower rate, I am culturally, economically much forward. Comfortable with ABC? आप में से बहुत लोगों ने मुझे स्टेज 2 दिया है। स्टेज 2 का मतलब है मोर्टालिटी हैव बीन कंट्रोल्ड। मोर्टालिटी इज कंट्रोल्ड का मतलब यू आर इंक्रीजिंग लाइफ एक्सपेक्टेंसी एंड यू आर कंटेनिंग इन्फेंट मोर्टालिटी। दिस विल नॉट बी वैलिड फॉर द प्रिमिटिव फोर्थ वर्ल्ड कम्युनिटीज। Okay, I want to add page, so I just quickly go to this much is done. Minor Oceania is which culture? Largely uninhabited. Meso-Africa is which culture? Dominantly fourth world community. वही तो बताया ना Walk and Webb ने. We do understand that all the countries that we have considered are not only primitive people, but they have got sizable population of the most recognized primitive world. So if I say pygmies, if I take sand bushmen, if I take Budwins, if I take Masais, they are actually the people who have got high fertility counterbalanced by high mortality. So they are right there in stage 1. अच्छा, अब सबसे important point आ रहा है, ध्यान से देखेंगे, उसके बाद फिर we'll start writing. Very important thing, please try and understand. Original theory. So why I have to write this? I'll go back to the diagram page. Original theory. So who are the propounders of original theory? Thomson noticed them. Original theory had 3 stages. Our diagram have 5 stages. Original theory had prediction. Because now here comes the value. When I write the year of a concept being published, value of time comes in there. खुद से सोच कर देखेंगे 1929 and 1945. Now this is just a lead to proceed further. Original theory had 3 stages. Our diagram have got 5 stages. तो इसका साफ मतलब है कि हमारा डायग्राम ओरिजिनल नहीं है. Original theory talked about 3 stages of transition and then talked about prediction. So can I go back to the diagram page? ध्यान से देखो. Original theory had only 3 stages. इसका मतलब it talked about that fertility have started dipping. उसके बाद छोड़ दिया. उसके बाद क्या कर रहे हैं? Predict कर रहे हैं that dipping fertility will eventually match mortality where it is gone. Dipping fertility have, हमने उड़ा दिया उसको. चलो आपके पास डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन मॉडल हम फटाफट से बनाते हैं, ठीक है? ऐसा होना नहीं चाहिए पर हो गया, चलो कोई बात नहीं. क्विकली इसे ड्रॉ कर देते हैं. आपको अब डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन पता है. मोर्टालिटी इज दिस, फर्टिलिटी इज दिस, फर्टिलिटी विल डिप टू मैच अप विद मोर्टालिटी, ठीक है? चलो आई हैव क्विकली ड्रॉन इट. हमने आपको समझा दिया था. चलो अब स्टेजेस को डिमार्केट कर लेते हैं, टोटल पॉपुलेशन को यहां करते हैं। आज का दिन ही खराब है, ठीक है, बना दिया, लेबलिंग कर दिया। अब जल्दी से देखते हैं। ओरिजिनल थियरी हैड 1, 2 and 3 stages. So original theory was talking about what? It was talking about that after fertility will start dipping, it can eventually match up with mortality right here, इसी को matching up कहेंगे ना, and then can further dip below mortality. So in 45, Thompson 29, Notistein 45. In 45, population decline. Will the stage 5 be the declining stage of population? Come on. Will we have the declining population? Yes, no. So 45 में तो declining population project कर रहे थे ना. By 70s, declining population became real. So this diagram that you all have copied down, which we have created our base to understand this, have been proposed by Peter Haggett. And this name will come into our study almost every second day in World Human Geography, renowned human geographer. And it was published in 71 and then 75. So in 45, what was projected by 70s became real. तो ओरिजिनल थियरी में कितने स्टेजेस हैं? 3, and rest was predicted. So 45 में prediction was okay. Today it is not predictive. Europe is declining. Europe's population, UNFPA says Europe is vanishing. Where Europe is getting vanished? Europe is getting depopulated. Are you understanding? Make sense? Give me, drop in. Europe is in dash stage. Europe, most of the European countries have fertility dipping below mortality. तो अप्लाई करो, fertility is addition per 1000 per year, mortality is subtraction. If addition will be less than subtraction, population will get decline. I hope you are comfortable. अच्छा, so बहुत ध्यान से, I hope I don't do the blunder. Original theory had 3 stages and prediction. So what we have roped in our concept, prediction is gone. Now there is nothing called prediction. We have added that in stages. Whose work we are following? Peter Haggett. Comfortable all of us? Okay. And what else we have to take into consideration? Number 3, causes. So we study demographic transition model with A, stages, and B, causes. Stages by default will include the original theory's prediction, because what was predicted is now real on map of world. Have I made the point clear to all of us? So Peter Haggett's, neither Thompson nor Notistein. We are taking Peter Haggett's version of demographic transition model. So have we discarded Thompson Notistein's work? No, we have not. We are taking European experience. We are taking 3 observations: fertility, mortality from high to low. Mortality will dip first. From stage 1 to stage 5, there will be cultural, economic transition. So we are following all that. Only thing that we have modified is in 45, what was predicted is now real. I think it is comfortable. Diagram you have already developed. So write down the next point. It is Peter Haggett's modification to the original theory. Peter Haggett's modification to the original theory that is considered in demographic studies. Same point, change over. It involves 5 stages of transition. 5 stages of transition. Bracket में लिखेंगे the original theory incorporated 3 stages. Close the bracket. These 5 stages includes आपने डायग्राम ऑलरेडी बना लिया है, तो देर इज नो नीड टू मेक द डायग्राम अगेन, बट आई वॉन्ट ऑल ऑफ यू टू राइट डाउन द नेम्स ऑफ द स्टेजेस वेरी केयरफुली. ठीक है, ओपनड अप द डायग्राम, फॉर्मल डायग्राम इन फ्रंट ऑफ यू एज वेल. सो नाम लिख रहे हैं हम स्टेजेस का. स्टेज नंबर 1 हाई स्टेशनरी. हाई स्टेशनरी, बिल्कुल लिस्ट बनाकर लिखो, फिर डिटेल्स कर रहे हैं. नंबर 2 early expanding. 3 late expanding. 4 low stationary. And 5 declining population. पहले आप मुझे यहां तक बिल्कुल क्लियर है ऑल ऑफ अस, कोई डाउट नहीं है. हमें कौन से 2 पार्ट्स में कंसेप्ट को पढ़ना है? Path stages and causes. Is that comfortable? Original theory had 3 stages prediction. So what was predicted in 45 is real now. So why should we take prediction? ठीक, अब ये फॉर्मल इमेज आपके सामने है. आपने इमेज ऑलरेडी कॉपी डाउन कर लिया था. अगर आपको कुछ उसमें ऐड करना है तो इसे ऐड करो. हम आपको कुछ और समझा रहे हैं, इसके बियॉन्ड ध्यान से समझेंगे. लिखने में फिर ज्यादा समय नहीं लगेगा, because we have to judge demographic transition model का validity hand in hand. Fertility, mortality is at high. Why it is called high stationary? Fertility, mortality दोनों high है और total population stationary है. Come on. Fertility, mortality दोनों high है और total population stationary है. ठीक है? Yes. And when I take up the reference beyond, please notice mortality, that is death rate, will start declining the first. Fertility will remain high for longer time. जब तक fertility high है और mortality dip कर रही है, आप stage 2 में हैं, उसको कहते हैं early expanding. जैसे ही fertility dip होना शुरू हो, ये सब की है जिसके बेस पर आप डायग्राम एग्जामिनेशन में बनाएंगे. As soon as fertility starts dipping, I enter stage 3. So transition between stage 2 and stage 3 is a population explosion. What is the difference between stage 2 and stage 3? We have understood. In both the cases, total population will increase. Difference is population and population growth rate both will increase. Population will increase, but growth rate will start decreasing. And at this spot, I think all of us will readily agree to this. At this spot, if I ask you to take up the reference, right here, अगर हम इसको population explosion मान रहे हैं, जो हमने अपने डायग्राम में भी बनाया था, इसको आप क्या कहोगे? What is this black spot will be more visible? What is this transition between stage 4 and 5 will be? Stable population. Zero population growth. क्या डेफिनेशन होगी जीरो पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ की? कम ऑन, फर्टिलिटी इज एडिंग, मोर्टालिटी इज सब्ट्रैक्टिंग. फर्टिलिटी मोर्टालिटी बिल्कुल एक दूसरे से मैच हो गया तो एडिशन सब्ट्रैक्शन इन बैलेंस है ना? यस नो, इसको बोलते हैं जीरो पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ. तो ट्रांजिशन बिटवीन 2 and 3 क्या है? पॉपुलेशन एक्सप्लोजन. ट्रांजिशन बिटवीन 4, 5 क्या है? जीरो पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ. आई थिंक वी आर वेरी कंफर्टेबल विद दिस डायग्राम नाउ. इसके बारे में लिखना भी कोई ज्यादा मुश्किल काम नहीं है, आप बहुत आराम से इसके बारे में लिख सकते हो. आपको समझना क्या है, इसकी वैलिडिटी जज करनी है. अब मुझे फील हो रहा है कि मुझे अफ्रीका को ऐड कर देना चाहिए स्टेज 2 में, तो एग्जामिनर मेरी फीलिंग के मार्क्स थोड़े ही ना देगा, मुझे तो प्रूव करना पड़ेगा ना. तो ध्यान से सुनेंगे, बहुत ध्यान से. अब क्रूड बर्थ रेट और क्रूड डेथ रेट का इक्वेशन चल रहा है यहां पर. So I have to learn the values of crude birth rate and death rate on the map of world. I have already given you value of crude birth rate. I'll make you that in writing. अभी बहुत ध्यान से समझेंगे. Global crude birth rate is 21 live births per 1,000 per year. I take this average and thereby I range the crude birth rate for the map of world into 3 categories: high crude birth rate, moderate crude birth rate and low crude birth rate. So moderate होना चाहिए ना ग्लोबल एवरेज के आसपास, हाई होगा ग्लोबल एवरेज से ऊंचा, लो जाएगा ग्लोबल एवरेज से कम. So carefully try to apply. We demographers take into consideration pattern of crude birth rate as high, moderate, low. तो हम हाई को कौन सी कैटेगरी में ले रहे हैं? मोर देन 40 लाइव बर्थ्स. बहुत ध्यान से सुनिए, कुछ नहीं लिखना. इफ आई से that most of the African countries are experiencing stage 2 of demographic transition because these countries have got crude birth rate of more than 440 live births per 1000 per year. तो ये बात तो समझ में आ गई कि मोस्ट ऑफ द अफ्रीकन कंट्रीज हैव गॉट वेरी हाई फर्टिलिटी, पर हम कन्विंस नहीं हैं. क्यों नहीं है? फिर से ध्यान से देखो. Why we are not much convinced with it? Because when I take reference of high crude birth rate, so high crude birth rate तो stage 1 से लेकर stage 2 तक रहता है. If you are saying that we have got more than 40 live births per 1000 per year as my crude birth rate, and thus you should consider me in stage 2, I'll question why should I not consider in stage 1? Because stage 1 and stage 2 में fertility में ज्यादा difference तो दिखाई नहीं दे रहा. Come on class, are you understanding here? What is the fundamental difference between stage 1 and 2? Mortality. Stage 1 high fertility is counterbalanced by mortality. Stage 2 mortality have started dipping. इसका मतलब मुझे क्रूड डेथ रेट को लेकर आना पड़ेगा. क्रूड डेथ रेट के साथ बहुत बड़ा पंगा है, समझकर देखो क्या बता रहे हैं. क्रूड डेथ रेट वर्ल्ड का कितना है, इसके बाद हम क्रूड डेथ रेट की बात करेंगे नहीं, ध्यान से सुनेंगे. व्हाट इज क्रूड डेथ रेट ऑफ वर्ल्ड? इट्स 9. And when I am purposefully writing the names of the country. When I talk about country like Afghanistan, when I talk about country like Niger, are you mentally reaching? कुछ मत लिखो, बस समझने की कोशिश करो. When I talk about country like Sweden and when I talk about country like Austria, have you mentally reached? हमने purposefully 2 pairs of country ले लिया. They have got high crude death rate. If I just take the data table of crude death rate and I just try to analyze on, I want to world it for study it for world map, I conclude that crude death rate is very high for countries like Afghanistan, Asian country, country like Niger, Somalia, African countries, countries like Sweden, Austria, European countries. If I use crude death rate as my value to study, do you agree that my study will go nowhere? Afghanistan and Niger have got high crude death rate because life expectancy is low, infant mortality rate is high. Sweden and Austria has got high crude death rate because maximum population is in old age. कोई comparison है? नहीं है. Am I making sense? Crude death rate is not the rate of population that can be applied for global study. It is favorable rate to compare identical population. इसलिए हमने 2 pairs of country बनाए. Use crude death rate to compare Australia and Niger. Use crude death rate to compare Austria and Sweden. But if you compare Sweden and Afghanistan, then you are actually taking your study nowhere. Are you understanding? Nutshell. I need to first convince myself, then only I can convince anyone. If you are not convinced with what you are writing, it gets reflected in your writing. So be very clear. Demographic transition model is about fertility and mortality. I have understood what is fertility and mortality. I have no problems with fertility. Fertility is high for developing countries Africa. Fertility is moderate for other developing countries, Latin American, Asian. Fertility is low for developed world. So it goes very rational. I can apply it to the map of world. But when it comes to death rate, I cannot apply it to the global comparison. So we demographers don't take crude death rate. पहले ये बताओ यहाँ तक convince हुए? If I don't take crude death rate, here, are we convinced? All of you in the virtual class, convinced? Great. अब ध्यान से सुनो. Crude death rate नहीं ले सकते. उसके बिना कैसे distinguish करें कि आप stage 1 या 2 में हो? Stage 1 and 2 is equal to crude death rate. Yes or no? In both these stages, fertility is near high, near similar. What is making the difference is death rate. I cannot take death rate. तो क्या करें? हम death rate को supplement कर देते हैं. हम किससे supplement करते हैं death rate को? ध्यान से देखेंगे. Total fertility rate. हम सारी डेफिनेशन लिखवाएंगे जब हम कंटेंट बिल्ड करेंगे. अभी आप लोगों को बहुत क्लियरली समझना है इसके बारे में. टोटल फर्टिलिटी रेट TFR. न्यूज़पेपर्स में सुनते रहते हो आप, न्यूज आइटम्स में आता रहता है TFR ऑफ इंडिया, जो कंट्रोवर्शियल था. फ्यू मंथ्स बैक वी हैड द NSSO डेटा which talked about that Indian total fertility rate has reached replacement level. उस डेटा को हमने इवेंचुअली डिस्कार्ड कर दिया. नीति आयोग हैव आल्सो नॉट गिवन रिकॉग्निशन टू इट. इट वाज कंट्रोवर्शियल. व्हाट इज TFR? अब जितनी भी टेक्निकलिटीज है उसको साइड में रखते हैं. सब लोग ध्यान से सुनेंगे, कुछ नहीं लिखना. टोटल फर्टिलिटी रेट is the rate of demographic study which attempts to measure what is the average number of children a female will give birth to, needless to add, during her reproductive age. What is the number of children that female will give birth to during her reproductive age? It's an average that we calculate. So TFR, when is taken in consideration to death rate, mortality, it gives me replacement level of population. अब before I speak out in the technical term, हम बिल्कुल crude terms में आपको समझा रहे हैं, ध्यान से समझो. I as a female will give birth to how many children during my reproductive age? So the first thing that I have to consider, I am learning in a very crude manner. Human reproductive sequence or human reproductive process cannot be done by an individual. It requires male, female both. So, what is the average number of children that I'll give birth to in my reproductive age? Is equal to me and my partner is giving birth to, carefully understand, 2 children. Apply karo. Older generation parents are giving birth to 2 children. मतलब older generation is substituted by same number of individual. Population is stable. Parents are giving birth to 3 children. Older generation is leaving behind 3. Population is growing. Come on. Yes, and if older generation is giving birth to 1 child, population is declining. TFR considered in reference to mortality gives us replacement level of population. It's an average. So what level of TFR is called replacement? 2.1 to 2.5. So if TFR is between 2.1 to 2.5, population is at replacement level. Any number of TFR higher than 2.5, population is growing. Any population TFR below 2.1, population is declining. अब बिल्कुल थोड़ी देर के लिए ध्यान से सुनेंगे. Why I am so much convinced that most of the African countries, आपको पता है most में कौन सा included नहीं है? Northern Africa and South Africa. आपको पहले ही बताया था ये rational demarcation है, हमने अपने purpose के लिए कुछ नहीं करा. Most of African countries are in stage 2 and not 1 because they have very high crude birth rate of 40 live births per 1,000 per year and their TFR is exponentially high, more than 4.5. इसका मतलब क्या? दोनों ही तरफ राउंड ऑफ कर लो. Parents are leaving behind more than 4 children. Leaving behind. तो मोर्टालिटी को तो कंट्रोल करा ना, यस और नो? नहीं तो लीव बिहाइंड कैसे करते? चिल्ड्रन आपके पहले ही चले जाते. पेरेंट्स आर लीविंग बिहाइंड मोर देन 4 चिल्ड्रन इज इक्वल टू पॉपुलेशन इज एक्सपोनेंशियली ग्रोइंग. वैलिडिटी भी हुआ डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन मॉडल का, और डेमोग्राफिक एट्रीब्यूट्स पढ़ने का एक रैशनल भी मिला. नहीं तो टेबल बना बना के टीएफआर के ग्लोबल वर्ल्ड परव्यू को लेंगे, नथिंग विल कम अप इन आवर हैंड. कुछ बात समझ में आई? हाउ आर वी कन्विंस्ड दैट अफ्रीकन कंट्रीज मोस्टली, आपको पता है एक्सेप्शन कहां पर है. एंड आंसर राइटिंग का भी दिस इज द ट्रिक. लाइक आई एम गिविंग एग्जामिनर, व्हाट इज ट्रांजिशन स्टेज 2? बुक से जो आया, ट्रांजिशन स्टेज 2 बिगिंस विद द बिगिनिंग ऑफ डिक्लाइन ऑफ मोर्टालिटी. ठीक है, गो अहेड देते जाओ. बिगिनिंग ऑफ डिक्लाइन ऑफ मोर्टालिटी. बुक ने हमें बताया फर्टिलिटी रिमेन्स हाई, सो टोटल पॉपुलेशन ग्रोज एंड ग्रोथ रेट ऑफ पॉपुलेशन ऑल्सो ग्रोज. चलो समझ में आ गया. अब हम इसको वैलिड बना रहे हैं, हम बुक के बियॉन्ड जा रहे हैं, बिकॉज वी हैव टू लर्न डेमोग्राफिक एट्रीब्यूट. This is the best figure to make me understand demographic attribute on the map of world. So I want to rope in. Most of the African countries are experiencing stage 2. I have to prove it. They have very high crude birth rate of more than 40 live births per 1,000 per year. But why stage 2? Why not stage 1? They have TFR more than 4.5. Mind it, stage 1 में TFR कहां होना चाहिए? Come on all of you here. छोड़ रहे हैं इसके बाद, जल्दी बताओ. टीएफआर स्टेज 1 में किस लेवल पर होना चाहिए? व्हाट इज इक्वल राहुल? एट रिप्लेसमेंट लेवल. तभी तो पॉपुलेशन स्टेशनरी है ना. हाई स्टेशनरी क्यों है? फर्टिलिटी मोर्टालिटी इज हाई एंड टोटल पॉपुलेशन इज स्टेशनरी. व्हाई टोटल पॉपुलेशन विल बी स्टेशनरी? Total fertility rate is at replacement. When your total fertility rate is exponentially high of more than 4.5, आप stage 1 में थोड़े ही ना होगे, आप stage 2 में ही तो होगे. I hope you are understanding. तो हम सिर्फ डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन मॉडल नहीं समझ रहे, हम डेमोग्राफिक एट्रीब्यूट्स को टेम कर रहे हैं. कौन से डेमोग्राफिक एट्रीब्यूट्स? फर्टिलिटी, मोर्टालिटी. मतलब ये बिल्कुल वही वाला लॉजिक है. एग्जामिनर कल्चरल रीजन पूछे, बॉकेन वेब को पकड़कर आंसर लिखो, चाहे उनको मेंशन मत करो. वैसे एग्जामिनर फर्टिलिटी मोर्टालिटी पूछे, डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन मॉडल को पकड़कर आंसर लिखो, नहीं तो योर आंसर विल गो नोवेयर. कम ऑन, यू कैन नॉट मेक द टेबल अफ्रीका, नाइजीरिया, दिस इज टीएफआर, नाइजर, दिस इज टीएफआर, तंजानिया. आप क्या कर रहे हो? आंसर थोड़ी लिख रहे हो. दिस विल गिव यू द लॉजिक ऑफ आंसर. राइट, आई थिंक दिस इज कंफर्टेबल. तो हमने अभी स्टेजेस के बारे में नहीं बात करी है, बस एक आपको आउटलाइन दिया है. आई थिंक इंट्रोडक्टरी पार्ट इज वेरी वेल डन. ऑल ऑफ यू हेयर? थॉमसन नोटिस्टीन, यूरोपियन ऑब्जर्वेशन, हाई फर्टिलिटी मोर्टालिटी टू लो, फर्टिलिटी विल टेक टाइम टू डिप, mortality will dip faster, and stage 1 to stage last. You are making the transition from primitive to more advanced society in every parameter: culture, technological, economic. How was the class today? Manav has given me 100%. अरे वाह. And you will find it more amazing. Population के साथ जो सबसे बड़ा myth यही है ना कि हम सोचते हैं population का मतलब नंबर रट्टा मारो. Population is not number. Population is analyzing number. और वो एनालिसिस एक बार पकड़ में आ जाए, उसके बाद कोई भी न्यूज़पेपर आइटम आता है डेमोग्राफी का, यू कैन इजीली रोप इन दैट. ओके, डन, बाय बाय, सी यू. आप लोग चलो, हम यहाँ पर अभी इनको बाय बाय करके आ रहे हैं. एनीवन हियर विद द क्वेश्चन? वर्चुअल क्लास, इफ यू हैव मेंशनड इट देन इट्स गुड. राहुल, नमीक्षा, दोनों ही होगा. माल्थस भी होगा, मार्क्सियन भी होगा. चलिए, बाय बाय, गुड नाइट, सी यू टुमारो. हाँ हाँ, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. आई एम नॉट बाइंडिंग यू इन टाइम बिकॉज आई वॉन्ट यू टू राइट द आंसर दैट यू